this deck profile, I'll show you how to deal with DPE, Swordsoul, and how to create the craziest turn 1 board. If you're interested, stay tuned because I'm going to be showing you my Despia and DPE deck profile. Yo, what's going on guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Shahid, and if you're new here, I make content for Yu-Gi-Oh! I do deck profiles, Master Duel content, pack openings, and a lot more. I'm really excited actually to share this video because I'll be breaking down my Despia deck profile. It's such a cool alternative deck that's still competitive in this format, and I think it deals with DPE very, very well. It also deals with Swordsoul. We have a card called Despian Quaeritis, which people have coined the checkmate of Swordsoul, and that's very true. Let's get into this. You know, we're going to break down the monsters, spells, and trap, and yeah, stay tuned. Okay guys, so let's start off with the monsters. I'm running 3 Despian Tragedy. This is your starter of the deck. You always want to banish this with a Law of Darkness, or you want to send it a banned opening. If it gets sent to grave by card effect, you can add a Despia to hand. And usually you always want to add the boy himself, Aluber, the Jester of Despia. And you've seen the rarity of the deck. Let me just get that out of the way. I got super lucky with Alubers. I got 2 super rares. And if you've seen my latest video, you noticed that I also play this in real life. So I genuinely enjoy this deck, and it's just really cool that I got 2 royal rares for the Despia guys. But moving on, running 2 Maxi. I'm already running 45 cards, so I think 2 Maxi is good for me. Next, we just run the 1 Ash Blossom. Now, when it comes to hand traps, I always say do whatever you feel is best. I only have 1 Ash Blossom, but I'm fine with that because I run Cross Out, and I purely just want to negate other Ash Blossoms that try to hit my Fusion Destiny. Now, one of the most intriguing parts about this deck profile was the fact you can make DPE without Fusion Destiny. Okay, it sounds weird, but trust me, it goes really well with the deck, and because they're dark monsters, it synergizes with everything. You can make so many Quaeritises, and it just really helps synergize with the deck. Moving on, Egypt Chain. So this is a very standard package in the current TCG version of this deck. It just gives you a lot of hand advantage, and because they're dark, it synergizes with the deck really well. So that's why it's there. It's really just sort of a hand management and monster material presence kind of engine. Moving on, we got the 1 Fallen of Albaz. I think I want to run 2 just because having Albaz makes the Quaeritis the checkmate against Swordsoul. I think Albaz is one of the craziest cards in this game specifically. It deals with a lot of light and dark monsters because you can fuse with them for Albion. To break down Albaz quickly, it's a super poly without the your opponent cannot respond stuff. Moving on, it's a Despia deck. Of course, we need 3 Aluber. It searches every branded spell trap in the deck. It also has an effect in grave where if a fusion leaves the field by card effect or battle, you can target an effect monster your opponent controls, special summon this card, and if you do, negate the targeted monster effects until the end of this turn. So it's this crazy back and forth recursion that you get in the deck. And if you have the field spell on the field, the fusions come back when Aluber dies. So it's really funny how that works. It's really annoying to deal with as well. Moving on, we've got 2 Malicious. I think I've already explained this. Having Malicious as a level 6 or higher hero lets us make DPE because in order to make him, we need a level 6 or higher hero monster. So that's why I play Malicious. Now, Dramaturge has, let's just appreciate the art on this card. It's amazing. I love it so much. Dramaturge of Despia is a beat stick at 3k, but that's not the reason why I play him. If he's used as a fusion material, if used as a fusion material from the hand or I believe the field, he can actually come back to the field, which is disgusting because if you fuse and make like a 3k boss monster, you had another 3k monster in the form of Dramaturge and nearly you're OTKing them, right? So that's one of the powers of Dramaturge, but also it's a infinite impermanence when a extra deck type monster has been special summoned, and that can disrupt a lot of strategies. Things that come to mind are Mubeta Fafnir, the Exceed monster for Drytron. It can also force Swordsoul players to maybe activate their effects straight away because if they just summon that synchro monster, it's going to get negated, right? So it makes things a little bit awkward for some decks, and it's just a really good way to OTK. That's why I'm running 2. Now in the TCG build of Branded, this card is the best card in the deck. It's just ridiculous. In this game, it doesn't have the same power level, but it's good enough that you definitely like have to run it. And obviously it's a Despia name as well, which is really good. So again, the same kind of clause as Dramaturge. So let's say they actually deal with your DPE. Let's say they call by the grave, its effect in grave. Ad libitum will bring it back, which is insane. So yeah, having Ad libitum there as a second DPE is just really, really funny to resolve. Now I plan to add more Nibiru's in the future, but for now I've just added 1. We don't actually play into Nibiru too much, but I wanted to keep it as a cross-out target just in case. And also it's just really good in the meta right now. So, you know, resolving Nibiru, you just kind of win the game in most cases. Okay, and I think that's it for the monsters. We'll just go straight into the spells. This is going to be a really interesting part. A lot of the deck is spell-based. So, yeah, I'm excited to get into this. Okay, so the spell cards of the deck. We're running 2 Polymerization. It's just part of the Egypt chain and Patchwork engine. Egypt chain, when sent to graveyard, adds Patchwork to hand. And you can kind of see what the deck is trying to do in terms of this engine. And having poly is great because we can just keep fusing. This is one of the ways we hard make DPE as well. Next is Foolish Burial. A card you want to send with this like 99% of the time is Tragedy. Because again, if you send to grave by card effect, such as a Despian monster. You can also send Malicious to grave as well. Or if you have Branded in red in hand, you can actually add the Dramaturge back to your hand if it's in grave and then fuse and then bring that back. Fusion Destiny, I don't know if there's much I need to say about this card. Just remember that it locks you into Dark Hero monsters after resolving. So you want to activate this as the last card in your combo. And yeah, obviously it makes DPE, but it loses really bad to Ash Blossom. That's why we have the cross out. I ran this at 2. I don't want to run it at 3 because we actually need our extra deck quite a lot. There's a lot of matchups where we might need half of the extra deck in the mid or late game because I run Super Poly and things like that. So I'm decided to run 2. I'll be honest, it's kind of awkward sometimes to think what to banish. But there are some easy targets. I'll just go over those quickly. You can always banish Dangerous. You can banish some of the Albaz fusions. Maybe a copy of Quaeritis. Maybe a copy of Masquerade. Definitely one of these guys. Or maybe all 3 of them. Just depending on what your hand looks like. And yeah, that's so what Prosperity does. It just digs through your whole deck. And you can find that out. You can find the Vanities. You can draw the Super Poly. You can draw the Aluber, the Nibiru. It's crazy. It's crazy. So running one of the Branded Fusion. Which can be searched with Aluber as well. It's a really good field spell and it lets you just have a lot of recursion when it comes to your opponent trying to remove your stuff on board. It's also a polymerization for level 8 or higher fusion monsters. Notice how DPE is level 8, which is how a lot of the time we hard make DPE without Fusion Destiny. We just use the theater to actually make the DPE. And then moving on, Super Poly. I did mention Swordsoul in the intro and this is one of the ways we destroy them. Super Poly can fuse with the Chi-Shao. It can fuse with the Baron. If you have Mud Dragon and there's another wind on the field, it does happen sometimes, especially in the next pack when we get Griffin. Super Poly is a really powerful card. It also deals with a lot of, just not even Swordsoul, just every deck in the meta right now. And Dragon Stabilizer is one of the cards that you could generically make quite often. It's the case that a lot of powerful monsters in the game are dark or light. So you just have a lot of success creating these fusions with Super Poly. And I think the best thing about the card, which lets you break a ton of boards, is neither player can activate cards or effects in response. So, you know, you chain this in response to something they do, or you just do it in an open game state, and they're very salty. I can tell you that. Next, Call by the Grave. Bullets as the Master Duel meta attacks. You just have to play it. It's just really, really strong. Takes out Maxi, takes out DP, takes out Ash. Just, yeah, this card is one of the best cards in the game right now. Even in the TCG as well, people are saying it should be banned. Now, I personally love this card. I just like resolving it. It just feels like such a cool interaction when someone hand traps you and you chain and you declare the hand trap, and then the chain just resolves and your original card gets resolved too. You've noticed as well, we're running 1 droplet. I plan to add more, maybe 1 more, and yeah, cross out again. You can call droplet and negate droplets, which is amazing. Moving on, we're playing Branded Opening at 3. This card recently got hit to 1 in the OCG ban list. It's a really powerful card, hitching a monster that's not part of the cost. So cards that say if sent to grave by card effect, they resolve. You could send Tragedy, you could send Chain. If you activate Branded Opening in the standby or draw phase, you can actually dodge Droll and Lockbird and Effect Veiler, kind of like the Searcher of the deck. And you know how every deck these days has a 3-off Searcher, it's kind of like that. It also has a really great graveyard effect. If a fusion you control is by a card effect, you manage card from a graveyard instead. So this is sort of the card you mostly play on your opponent's turn because the monster summoned can't attack directly. The point of it, I think, in Master Duel is really just to summon like a second Masquerade, put pressure on, or you can fuse with the ad libitum or Dramaturge that's in the grave, add it to hand, and then fusion summon. Again, yeah, you really just want to use it to maybe set up triple or double Masquerade, and that can close out games in itself. We run Infinite Permanence at 2. I really like this card. I think it's great going first, really good going second. Going second, it kind of acts like a droplets in a sense. You just trade 1 for 1 with a negate card, and then it's also a good cross out target as well. So I'm running at 2. And then of course Vanity's Emptiness. This is like one of those, this card has just been recently banned in the OCG, but for a long time it was allowed. and it's kind of the same in this game where it's at 1, it's extremely powerful. If you flip and resolve this card, you kind of win the game, because if the opponent can't special summon and you've already set up your board, that's just game. It just spells game. Okay, so now we moved on to the extra deck. There are some really cool cards in here. One thing I will say is there's a lot of flex spots, right? I'm running one dragon, it's a super poly target, and it's great for breaking boards. Destiny or Dangerous, again, if we hard make DP, we can use Dangerous and then another hero like Denier to make DPE. I think that this engine is actually really good in the deck, although I can see why you use the Dasher Celestial engine. That's also really efficient because it draws 2 as well. Slime Venom, again, another super poly target, but also with Fallen of Albaz, you can discard a card for effect as cost and then fuse with your opponent's field. Dragons Depiler, kind of the same thing, but more you summon this with your own fusion spells. It's a negate, but it's a weird way it works. So you place a counter on a monster they control. If it has a level, it becomes level 1, and then anything with a counter is negated. Just remember, if this card leaves the field, those monsters are not negated anymore. They have the counter, but they're not negated. So just keep that in mind. So these are Fallen of Albaz targets. There's not much to say about them, really. They're just there purely for the material requirement. That just lets us, you know, if Quaeritis dies on the opponent's turn and specials Albaz, we will more or less be able to resolve to summon Sprint or Albion, which can also fusion summon on its summon window. It lets you fusion summon, so just keep that in mind. And we move on to the best card in the deck. I love that this card has an animation, by the way. It looks really, really cool. Despian Quaeritis, this is again the checkmate of Swordsoul. I like to think it has a really good effect where anything that's not a level 8 or higher fusion has its attack turned to 0, and our whole deck is based on level 8 or higher fusion. So it's really funny how this effect just completely changes the game. And it's got that crazy effect where if it leaves the field by card effect, special the Albaz, and that part is the kicker, because you know most often than not opponents just don't expect that much, I guess, pushback on their board. So yeah, Despian Quaeritis is an amazing card. Of course, we run the DPE. In fact, you can keep bringing it back every standby phase, not just yours, every standby phase. Is really scary, but that's why we run this deck. It can actually steal DPEs, it can fuse with them with super poly, which doesn't trigger its grave effect. What's great about this deck is you're not too afraid of DPE because it actually works out in your favor with cards like super poly and Fallen of Albaz, also Despian Quaeritis. Moving on, Masquerade the Blazing Dragon. Summoning 2 of these on your first turn can sometimes be an FTK. Being burned for 1200 every time they activate effect kind of just spells out the game. It also comes back to the field if your opponent has an extra deck type monster that they control. So summoning back Masquerade and making a Verte because it's an extra body is really, really helpful. It's also really good as a fusion material. Truthful Verte can easily take this out. You probably could and try and bring out access code or something, but it's there because 3 darks in the field is quite common. Remember, DP is a dark and everyone is running it, so being able to fuse with that DPE and 2 of our dark monsters is quite likely. So that's why I've decided to run it, although it does become a pot of prosperity target more often than not. And lastly, I want to say the sickest card of the deck, the fact you can on the main phase steal an extra deck monster from your opponent's graveyard. Of course, it has to be properly fusion summoned. Summon Priskenion, you steal that DPE. That's a huge swing of momentum and it usually spells out the game. Remember, you can also banish. It doesn't have to just steal the monster. And the funniest part about this card, and something I think people forget, sometimes including myself, is if it attacks a monster and destroys by battle, you can actually burn them for the highest attack or defense that card has. And it's at 3200, which is nothing to laugh at. It's a really, really powerful card. It's got a high attack, a really good boss monster for Despia. The only downside is you need a Despia, a light and dark specifically, so 1 of each. And we don't play a lot of light targets in the deck, so that bit can be kind of awkward. But that's Priskenion. First Dark Lord, kind of the same as Truthful Veritem. You actually summon this quite often at the same time because all your monsters are fairy, your main monsters, and it's essentially a monster reborn during player's turn for fairy monsters in your graveyard, so you can keep spamming your fairies and have their effects activate. So yeah, Dark Lord is a really good card, but it's also just a pot of prosperity target. And moving on, we're playing Verte. Of course, you have to, if you're playing DP, you kind of have to play this. While we can hard make DP, it's just good to also use Verte. It just uses less resources. You do have to pay life points though, so just remember that. And it does lock you into, well, you can't special summon for the rest of the turn. But that's fine, you've just summoned a DP. It's a huge swing of momentum. Okay, so that's the deck profile. Despia DP is a very powerful strategy and it can deal with a lot of things in the meta right now. And most importantly, it deals with DP and Swordsoul very, very well. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've been able to climb with this deck into Diamond. There's a lot of dark and light boss monsters just generically in Yu-Gi-Oh! So we can take advantage of that if Super Poly. Having that pressure with our Proskenian, our Quaeritis, and our Masquerade. Don't forget as well, we can make DP very, very easily in this deck. And we run Crossout as well, so we can hit the Fusion Destiny. There's just a lot of really fun interaction with the deck and a lot of comeback potential thanks to the field spell. Okay guys, so that wraps up the deck profile. This was really fun to talk about and just discuss. I think there's a lot of potential with this deck and it can only get stronger. Don't forget that we have more branded support coming. And for how the deck is now, just with the first wave of support, it's incredible. So yeah guys, I think that's the deck profile. You know, if you liked the video, make sure to drop a like. If you find anything interesting, maybe the ratios were different to your version, or you just want to know more about the deck, let me know in the comments. I'd love to talk about it. And if you like the content so far, stay tuned because I'm going to be making more deck profiles just like this one. I've been climbing really well with Sun Avalon in Master Duel, and I plan to make that profile very soonish, either with the TCG version or Master Duel. Regardless, it's going to be very exciting and I can't wait to show that one. Stay subscribed so you can stay up to date with new videos and things like that. And yeah, guys, I think that's everything. See you guys in the next video. Peace.